if you could see by the title, we are going to be building an audio workstation for the year 2023 under $1,500 US. Now, personally, I will be building this machine myself. The reason why I'm building this machine myself is because of the fact that, well, basically, for the last 2 years, I've been using the same gaming rig for audio production. And it's starting to slow my computer down, and basically I just want to build a dedicated audio workstation for audio production. So I decided I was going to go Mini-ITX build for this just because of the fact that I don't have a whole lot of space in my little small 670 square foot apartment. So I already have a gigantic recording desk with many rack units, so I don't really need to take up any more space than I already have. Basically, with this ITX, this Mini-ITX build, the ITX case that I'm using, which is the Cooler Master Masterbox NR200P, it is small enough for me to be able to fit it where I need to fit it, as well as has enough performance to the point where I'm not going to need to worry about creating a hot box, essentially. So with that being said, we're going to start off with the case and then add the Cooler Master Masterbox NR200P. So if we can see here, what's going on here? Okay, there we go. Type Mini-ITX desktop here. And don't worry, every single part that I've actually put together has been exhaustively researched to make sure that everything fits appropriately. So now that we have the NR200P, which comes out at $129.99 through Amazon, we're going to pick the motherboard. Now, the motherboard that I fixed my sights on basically is an ASRock Z690 Phantom Gaming ITX/Thunderbolt 4 rig, well, motherboard. The reason why I went with this particular motherboard is because it was within my budget, and on top of all that, it has Thunderbolt, which is very important for many audio interfaces that are of high quality. So you want to make sure you have the ability to go with Thunderbolt. Specifically with this one, the Thunderbolt 4 also acts as a USB-C port, because that's the cool part about having a Thunderbolt 4 capable motherboard, is that they're both backwards compatible with one another, USB-C and Thunderbolt. So little tidbit for you. Now, we need a good CPU, and there are probably people out there who are like, well, you should go with i9, you should go with i9. Well, i9 is almost $600 in some cases. For example, this 13900K that's right here. So I went with an i7, which should be more than enough. I mean, granted, it's not the fastest thing out there, but it'll definitely do what it needs to do when it comes to audio production. I picked this 12700KF, which does not have integrated UHD graphics. Excuse me. And even though it doesn't have integrated graphics, we are going to pick a graphics card, or at least I am, because of the fact that, you know, I always like having a dedicated graphics card. And the reason why I like to have a dedicated graphics card is just because of the fact that I don't want to have the CPU have to worry about picking up the slack for the graphics. I just don't really see that as being efficient, even if they are dedicated parts of the CPU. So with the choose a CPU cooler option we have here, I love Noctua. I am a Noctua fanboy. I will always pick Noctua. And the cool thing about Noctua is that they have a really inexpensive NHL9i17XX for $45. It runs really super quiet. It's like 14.8 dB at its lowest fan speed. It only goes up to, I believe it was like 23, 25, something like that dB, which is very great for quietness. Now, I made sure that the CPU cooler will fit in the slot here on this motherboard without too much modification. We might have to take off this heatsink here, but that looks like it's just for the NVMe drives, which, since the Noctua is there to begin with, we shouldn't have to worry about the SSD overheating because the fan itself should cover the first NVMe slot. Should, at least. So with that being said, let's go back. We have to choose our memory, and personally I like the Kingston Fury Beast 32 gig. I saw some 5600 ones for not a whole lot of money, honestly. So let's try to find those. 5600 for it was like $170, I believe it was. Yeah, $169.99. Has 5600 megahertz, two 16 gigabyte sticks. That should be great. That should be golden. We should not have any worries there. And then for storage, I went with the 970 Evo Plus, which is evidently right up front here, because it's a solid NVMe drive, and on top of all that, we're going to add some more additional storage. Now, I went with Mushkin. You can pretty much use anything, Western Digital, whatever, and you don't have to use an NVMe. Personally, I'm going to use another NVMe just because of the fact that I love NVMe drives. They work fantastically. They're out of the way. You don't have to worry about, doing any cable management with inside the case itself. You just plop it on the motherboard and you're good to go. And with a Mini-ITX, it's all about, thinking about efficiency and not having to worry about all that stuff. So I think it'll work out very, very well in this case scenario. Now for a GPU, like I said, I have a gaming rig. If you're not worried about gaming at all, and I'm not really necessarily worried about gaming, but if my 2080 rig goes down at all, then I would like to have a backup until I can, get and address the situation going on with the 2080 build. So basically, I chose a very, very budget card. It is the Asus Phoenix. It is the Asus Phoenix 1650 OC right here. Oh, that's not the right one. 1650 G5. Let's see here. It's the one that I picked is $158.30. There it is. Yeah, I don't need it to be anything fancy. Mostly it's just going to be there for monitoring purposes. But like I said, if anything happens to my main gaming rig, I'm going to need to have something that I'll be able to at least play low, medium settings on most games and get me by until I can address the situation on the gaming rig. So with that being said, I'm going to choose a power supply. I love Corsair. Corsair makes fantastic PSUs, and for $130 you're not going to get much better than the SF600. Normally, because of the fact that the estimated wattage is 350, normally I would say go double what your estimated wattage is. However, in this case, I've already looked at all the components, and the only one that's really going to be pushing that 350 watts is the processor, not even the graphics card. Asus states that this specific card has a recommended PSU of 300 watts, which means it's not going to go much further than that, like at all, if at all. So yeah, that's something to keep an account for. And with the 600 watts, you're not going to really have too much room in Leo of, upgrading later on. But, at that point, if you're upgrading an ITX and a workstation, there's not much you can really add to a workstation that, like an audio workstation specifically, that's really going to push your power wattage up to over 600 watts. It's literally just going to be a very relatively bare bones computer with an emphasis on audio production and adaptability. So, and most of the stuff I use is going to be Thunderport. So since it's Thunderport, this motherboard should be all I really need. And if I really need to, add some more like IOs in terms of USB ports or anything like that, then I will definitely just grab an adapter of some sort, like an extension, and kind of go from there. So to choose an operating system, obviously, you could go Windows 10 64-bit, but eventually Windows 10 will be will stop being supported. So you kind of just want to go ahead and beat it to the punch and just grab Windows 11 to begin with. I don't have any need for any fancy professional versions of Windows 11. What I do specifically with audio production is very well achievable with just the Home Edition. And this is the DVD. However, I really only need the actual key itself, and I will just grab the ISO essentially from the website, and then do the installer from my current gaming rig, so that way I can go forth and just use a USB. If you do not have that specific ability, if you don't already have a current machine, I would recommend popping on like a cheap optical drive. And a cheap optical drive, you can get them for very, very little money. However, since this ITX build is not compatible with the case, I would definitely recommend going from an ITX to a mid-tower or bigger. However, I don't think you're really going to have too much of an issue. If you have a MacBook, you're probably not going to be able to get it out. But if you have a friend or a family member or a work computer, you could definitely 100% plug in a USB drive, create an installer, and have yourself raring to go very, very quickly. And that is the build that I made for 2023. That comes in at underneath $1,500. And this thing will be a beast for audio production. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If you have any recommendations, put a comment below. And like, rate, subscribe, comment, do what you want to do. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching.